Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I have a subscriber who asked a question which I will flip in here for you guys. And he is basically a 36-year-old. He used to be a former competitive powerlifter. Well, I guess he wouldn't. Yeah, he would used to be a former competitive powerlifter. Now he's back to lifting, I guess. He's saying that due to his work schedule, he sometimes has to work out at weird hours like 1 a.m., midnight, things like that. He's back to training 7 months, and he wants to know if that's okay. So, let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. All right, brother, for someone who's in that sort of situation, there's a couple different ways you can look at this stuff. You know what? Everyone has lives. Everyone has lives they have to work around. And yeah, it can be a disadvantage to have to train at midnight. It can be a disadvantage to have to train at 1 a.m. It may not give you the best workouts possible. But the fact of the matter is that at 36 years old, obviously doing a lot of work, busy guy, the fact that you're able to find the time and the commitment to come in and train at midnight, to train at 1 a.m., because that's what your schedule will allow, and you're still doing it, that says a lot about your drive. That says a lot about your drive. It says a lot about your desire to succeed at what you're doing. And the fact that someone would even come in and do that, anyone would come in and do that, that they're willing to, if that's the only time they can get into training due to their work is to train at midnight, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, anyone who comes in and does that, I can't envision them not being successful. Even if it's not an ideal time, someone who's willing to do that is willing to do what it takes to be successful, and you have to respect that. And you've got to look at someone like that and say, yeah, dude, you're going to be just fine. You're going to make it. You're going to make your gains. No doubt about that, because of that level of commitment that they're willing to show to what they're doing. And I'm not saying everyone has to be hardcore. I'm not saying training has to be hardcore and alpha and the way everyone tries to make it out to be. It doesn't. But consistency is everything. Determination is everything. And when a person is willing to come in and train at weird hours, because that's their only choice, but they're willing to do it to get it done, that's someone who's going to go the distance. They're going to get into shape. They're going to get their results. And so you have to respect that. You absolutely have to respect that. I know I do when someone says something like that. So as far as the actual negatives of doing it, you know what? Here's the thing. As much as I might talk about weight and I might talk about progressive overload and all of these things, sure, training at times of the day that might be your optimal time for strength or power or whatever else, yeah, it can have some benefits. You're probably going to get the best results doing that. But do you know what? Your body doesn't actually care about how much actual weight is on the bar. It only cares about tension. It only cares about fatigue. That's what stimulates your adaptation. Now, that is done normally through workload, through tonnage, through weight on the bar. And that stuff does matter, but your body doesn't measure those things directly. What it measures is fatigue. What it measures is workload. What it measures is how hard it does seem to be working. What does it take for it to get where it needs to go? And ultimately, the fact that you're coming in and you are, even if you're already fatigued, your body understands that. It doesn't mean that it's not going to respond to more fatigue, meaning just because you're 3% or 5% weaker at 1 in the morning than you are at 10 a.m., it doesn't mean that the work doesn't count. It doesn't mean that the work doesn't count, and it also doesn't mean that progressive overload doesn't count, because people forget that progressive overload is everything. And I don't know how much I can stress that. I stress that a lot, but it can't be stressed enough. Progressive overload is everything. And if you're able to progress and you get to the point to where you've gone from, deadlifting 300 pounds for 6 reps to deadlifting 400 pounds for 6 reps, you've gotten appreciably stronger. Does it matter that if you had been doing it at 10 a.m., you would have been doing 315 and gone to 415 in that same time for 6 reps? Yeah, it probably matters a little, but does it matter a lot? Meaning, is that going to make or break you? No, of course not. It's not going to make or break you. Not at all. Absolutely not at all. What your body knows is that you fatigued it, and you have now increased the amount of weight on the bar by like roughly 100 pounds for the same number of reps over a period of time. All it knows is it's doing an extra 33% work. Right? It knows that you've increased its workload by a third, the tonnage that it's having to move. So what if it's not ideal? So what if it's not optimal? You're still increasing workload. You're still adding weight to the bar. All right, and that is what your body is going to respond to. Sure, it's going to be less than earlier in the day, but you're also more fatigued. And training in a fatigue state, may not offer the best opportunity, but it's still progressive overload, and 100 pounds is 100 pounds when it's been added to the bar. Especially for 6 reps. That's 600 pounds of extra work every set. Your body does know that it's being taxed harder. It's going to adapt to that. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get stronger. Those things are going to happen as a result of that. Now, what you do need to keep in mind, and it's going to be especially true of someone who's well into their 30s, they're training at off hours like that, you do have to accept that you might be a little weaker, but if you never train earlier in the day, you're never going to know how much weaker you are. It's probably not worth worrying about. But the thing is, when you're at that age and you are training later like that, it can affect your recovery and your sleep patterns a little bit. So I think the most important factor for someone to hold on to who is coming in and having to train at those hours due to shift work or job, whatever, they do need to be extra careful in making sure they get enough sleep. All right, because staying up that late, which means, he's training at 1 a.m., he might not be getting home till 2:30 in the morning, that can affect your sleep pattern a bit, because humans really are supposed to be asleep when it's dark. We get our best hormone responses as a result of sleeping when it's dark. That means the things like melatonin, things like growth hormone production. These things affect recovery. They will affect muscle growth to some extent. Is it going to be enormous difference? No, but it's going to matter a little bit. And so if you're having to do that, it is going to be very, very important that you are paying attention to your sleep and paying attention to your recovery. And yeah, you might not recover quite as well as someone who's training earlier in the day. Although, you know what? We could look at that a couple different ways. We could argue hormonally, maybe you're not getting the same recovery. But because you're training fatigued, you're also not hammering quite as much tonnage on your body either. So when we look at it from the recovery perspective, I was going to go that direction with the recovery, but midway through the video I stopped and realized, technically you're also not beating your body up quite as much. Right, because you're a little weaker, you're not quite putting as much tonnage per workout on your body as on your peripheral nervous system, on your bone structure, and those things do matter, because again, people need to remember recovery is not just about your muscles recovering. It's about your peripheral nervous system recovering. It's about your connective tissue recovering. It's about your bones recovering. People need to understand that. You get micro tears in your connective tissue. You get microfractures in your bones as a result of lifting. Your body has to then repair those things and strengthen them. It makes them stronger as a result of that. So another way you could look at it is, it might not hammer your bodies quite as much either as far as all of those systems with the recovery, because you aren't putting quite as much weight on the bar because it's later at night. But you do need to factor in the hormonal difference. And like I was saying earlier, it is critical that someone who's coming in training that late at night like that does get caught up on their sleep. Make sure you find a way to squeeze in that 8 hours of sleep after you train. It might require you to sleep until almost noon. And maybe that might mess with your shift work a little bit. And some people have shift work where they're doing a couple 12-hour shifts back to back. So maybe he doesn't have the luxury of sleeping in that late. And you know what? If that's the case, do the best you can. Get caught up after your next shift. If you need to, do the extra sleep. So if your shift work, because of training that late at night, stops you from getting 8 hours, you only get 6 hours. Get 10 hours the next night. Make sure that you get caught back up on that sleep before that next training session. And if you do that, you'll probably be okay. Because again, it is going to be about sleep. It's going to be about recovery. It's going to be about replenishing your body. And it's going to be just a little harder because of training at that time at night. But you know what? It's like I said earlier. It's like I was saying earlier. Someone who is dedicated enough to come in and train like that when that's the only option they have. They say, I'm going to get back in shape. I'm going to get my strength back. I want to feel younger again. I want to feel more vital. And I know the weightlifting is what it's going to take for me to do that. Someone who's willing to come in and do that around their shifts at work, you know what? I don't think they're going to have any trouble at all committing to the other aspects of it either, because that is someone who's committed to improvement. that is someone who's committed to getting their results. And people who do that, they're going to do the other stuff too. So I feel confident that anyone who's doing that, who knows that they need to make sure their sleep is caught back up on, they need to make sure their diet is good, everything's balanced, I know that they're going to find a way to get their sleep caught back up. I have confidence in people who are willing to show that level of commitment, that they'll do the other stuff too. So someone who's doing this, as long as they know they need to get the extra sleep, they'll get it. They know they need to maybe be eating a few more vegetables and everything to keep their diet balanced out so they don't get any nutritional deficiencies, which could affect their recovery, their rest patterns, everything else more. They're going to do that. They're going to do that. And yeah, and you can't worry about these things. Because the way you've got to look at it, okay, it might not be ideal to be training that late at night, but it's a hell of a lot better than not training at all. It's 100 times better than not training at all. So what if you only get 90% of your possible results because of the schedule? That's better than getting 0. That's a hell of a lot better than getting 0. So to the guy who wrote this, who's doing this, welcome back to the Iron Game, and props to you for being willing to go the distance like that and do what it takes to get your body back. Nothing but respect for you, brother. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.